Very much welcome to the Swedish Institute of International Affairs, but most of all, very much welcome to a meeting between Sweden and Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. Very much welcome to the foreign ministers of our four countries. Europe is at a challenging point in time, but we are meeting today to reflect on the kinds of changes that you can make. Some of us were part of that history. Perhaps many of you share the personal histories of what happened in 89, 90, 91, and of course far further back in history, because it is a historic moment when we now can celebrate 25 years of being together diplomatically, creatively, practically. I have to pay tribute to Mischa Sohlman, the chairman of the Swedish Institute. He called me one day back in 1989 and said, "Things are going to change. Let's be active." And we started working with the economics of the region. And as the drama of 1989, 90, and 91 unfolded, we saw that it was possible. And in this history of challenges, I would say one thing, that the decision by Sweden to level the playing field, to say that all countries in the region have a right to be part of the European Union, was a mega foreign policy decision that had an impact and that influenced what then followed. I will not take the foreign minister's time just to say that that very decision opened up for opportunities that we have then developed. It is tough to see that in 2016 our security arrangements in Europe are not what we hoped for. The economic prospects for Europe are not what we wanted. Brexit is challenging us, and the environment in the southern side of Europe is not helping us create that kind of world we then dreamt of. But now we're together, and we have to find a way ahead. And we have today 4 foreign ministers who speak for this perspective from the northern part of Europe. I know that you've met practically today, you've already spoken to media, but what we have here now is an opportunity to reflect and to say some things about how we should work with the new challenges ahead. And obviously, my first welcome goes to Margot Wallström, the Foreign Minister of Sweden. Margot, you've never feared saying what you think, and that is a great asset to this country. Margot, please welcome to the Institute once again.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think he should have an applause for putting us in that bigger political frame. Thank you so much, Mats, for the warm welcome, and Excellencies, Minister colleagues from the Baltic countries, ladies and gentlemen. The theme on the invitation, or the title of the invitation, is Freedom of the Press and Free Speech defending our democratic values. Well, I do not think that we could have chosen a better theme for today's discussion, as we, together with our Estonian, Latvian and Lithuanian colleagues and friends, celebrate the 25th anniversary of the re-establishment of our diplomatic relations following the regained independence of the Baltic states. And may I say how much I appreciate that you have come today, and we have already had a sort of a proper meeting, very much looking back, of course, sharing some anecdotes, and for example, Linas reminded me of the hotline that existed that they could call Sweden, and I'm not sure what he used it for always, but I hope that we have to solve some problems for Lithuania, and maybe this is an idea that we should use for other countries today, to open up a hotline, or to at least establish that kind of confidence in each other. But thank you all, because we have become really good colleagues and friends and partners, not least within the European Union. The Baltic Sea is no longer dividing us, it is uniting us. And we have found a very good partnership also in pushing for certain issues up the EU agenda. So thank you for everything and for being here. And the theme of today's discussion here, isn't that what the fight for freedom and independence was about? Was it not? The singing revolution, the human chain across the Baltic states, and the relentless struggle to resist an oppressive, occupying power, it all came down to standing up for and defending fundamental democratic values. And even though we feel joy today as we celebrate 25 years of regained independence for Estonia and Latvia, and more than 26 years for Lithuania, we are currently facing serious challenges to our fundamental rights and values. Freedom of the media is increasingly under threat in the European Union, its neighborhood, and around the world. We see examples of the spread of state-controlled propaganda, repressive legislation, and violence against journalists. And not only do these threats put the lives of reporters at risk, but they also hamper the participation of individuals in society and thereby inhibit the fundamentals of democracy. This year, we are also celebrating the 250th anniversary of the Swedish Freedom of the Press Act. And the Act guaranteed the right to engage in political debate and public access to official documents, and it also abolished the censorship of printed publications. We regret that around the world, the fundamental rights and freedoms that the Act set out to safeguard are being jeopardized. In our neighborhood, democracy and the rule of law are being undermined, and human rights are being violated. At the center of these challenges, our media landscape is under threat. Increasing resources are being spent by some states to spread blatant disinformation and propaganda. Human rights defenders and journalists are being targeted with repressive legislation. And these developments show the need for increased efforts to promote media freedom, freedom of expression, and media literacy. And we also need to step up our efforts in supporting independent media in Europe and around the world. Sweden and other countries support civil society organizations and other organizations in this regard in Ukraine and in our eastern neighborhood countries. We also contribute to new and independent Russian-speaking media in Estonia, the ETV Plus channel, and in Latvia, where the Stockholm School of Economics in Riga provides training for journalists. And I don't remember now the exact number, but it's an impressive number of journalists who have been trained there in Riga. Disinformation and propaganda risk the erosion of public trust in our democratic institutions and societies. And this is why it is so important for us Nordic and Baltic countries to work together in our region and also together in the European Union to train journalists in our neighborhood in investigative journalism and to support free media in regions particularly affected by disinformation and propaganda. The rule of law, democratic and constitutional values, and free media are at the core of the EU and the Council of Europe. These values of the European Union are common to the member states and as such must be respected for states to keep their membership rights intact. But we also see that they are under threat, and we see that it's more and more difficult also for us as political leaders to speak up for democracy and human rights and also the freedom of speech. EU member states need to broaden and deepen EU common values such as respect for human rights and the rule of law in times of very demanding political challenges, and this must be done in dialogue with EU countries. So, Excellencies, dear Minister colleagues, dear friends, the developments around our Baltic Sea during the last 25 years has indeed been impressive. And today when we discussed it, you concluded and we can conclude together that we did it in the right way. Actually, it happened in the right way. There is nothing to feel ashamed of in this process, but we can be proud of the process. And I think this is important also to remember as a historical lesson, as something that we can learn from, and hopefully use as an experience and spread also in other parts of the world. Our democracy and our fundamental values, though, can never be taken for granted. They need to be defended now, maybe more than ever. So let us join forces and stand up for democratic values, also when it hurts, or also when there is resistance, which have paved the way for our open and prosperous societies, characterized by non-discrimination, tolerance, justice, solidarity, and not least, equality between women and men. Thank you for listening, and good luck with this seminar. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Margot. I'm sure that we will want to come back to you. It happened in the right way, it happened in the best way, but those of us who remember the television tower in Vilnius and the OMON troops in Riga, we know that this did not come for nothing. It came in a period when people stood up. We face different issues today in Europe, and those of us who are associated with the values of Europe will have to stand up again and find the way ahead. And that there could be no better way to celebrate the 25 years than to find the way ahead. Now, I want to invite Marina Kaljurand, who is the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Estonia. Please take the podium. And I will just tell the audience, I don't think anyone needs more introduction than the position you have, but you have served in the United States. You have an economic background, which speaks to some of us. Yes, you do, at least according to here, and you have dealt with a very broad geography in foreign affairs. Please very much welcome, speak to us.
Thank you, sir. Honorable Director, dear Margot, Ladies and gentlemen, I correct, I don't have economic background. I'm a lawyer. And so I graduated from the law department of Tartu University. And you know what's interesting? I've served as an ambassador in 6 countries, and they always say Russia and the United States, and they forget about the others. So I'll name the others: Israel, Kazakhstan, Mexico, Canada, and Russia and the United States. So I've been a career diplomat for more than 25 years, and yes, now I have the privilege of serving as Estonia's foreign minister, and I do love my job. It's been a wonderful week, and I know it's going to continue. On the 20th of August, we celebrated back at home. Today we are here. Margot, once again, thank you so much for making this special day where we don't have to stick to our talking points, but we can talk about what we really feel, what we really think, and be together. And I know that we're going to Iceland, so the celebrations will continue. So let's, guys, pack our things and celebrate. Speaking today in Sweden, I can't avoid the topic of our bilateral relations and the topic of what role Sweden has played in Estonia and for Estonians. In Estonia, we even have Swedish time, which was in the 17th century and at the beginning of the 18th century. We're proud and we're happy that Karl Gustav established Tartu University, first school. So there are many things that connect us, and we're so close, we're neighbors. We will never forget the Second World War, when Sweden opened her heart, her homes to our refugees who were fleeing from the Soviet occupation. And I said it already twice today, but I still like to say that in this audience, I have Aino. We were born in the same year. She was born in Stockholm. I was born in Tallinn. And thanks to what Swedish government did throughout occupation, not recognizing occupation, and giving safe haven to our government in exile, we are now able to work together in Estonia to the benefit of a free, democratic Estonia. And of course, I'm very humbled to see faces in the audience who did much more during 90s and 91. I'm referring to our Marju Lauristin, a member of European Parliament, who is, Marju, I would say, godmother, one of the godmothers of restoration of independence. And there are many more people in the audience who have played their part in our history and who have played their part for our country. Our history has taught us that the best way to guarantee the security and well-being of the state is to rely strongly on the principles and norms that respect and fulfill human rights. And freedom of expression is one of the basic human rights, foundation of democracy. So I'm not going to quote, but trust me, we have a special section in our constitution which very much reflects the Convention on the Human Rights of the Council of Europe. We do honor and we do respect those provisions very, very much. Also because of our history. Nearly 50 years of occupation has taught Estonia what it means to live under censorship. We are glad that those days are over, and today we can enjoy complete freedom of press. We are proud that Estonia places 15th in global press freedom rankings. I can say what Latvia and Lithuania are, or you don't want to hear it. I'll say Latvia is 28th and Lithuania 23rd. Sorry, guys. Legal norms in Estonia respect free speech and are in line with principles followed in all democratic countries. And I'm also delighted that somewhere in the audience has to be Darja. Darja, are you here? Yes, sir. Oh, I didn't notice it. And in this audience, there is Darja, who will speak in the panel and who is the editor-in-chief of Estonian Public Broadcasting First Russian language TV channel, ETV+, which started a year ago, about which Margot mentioned, and which we are really happy to have, together with the assistance and help of our very good partners in the Nordic countries, but also in some other countries. Having said that, we can't be satisfied with the global trends. As Margot said, unfortunately, few people in the world can enjoy full freedom of expression and the freedom of press. This is not something everyone can take for granted. And according to the recent Freedom House report, only 13% of the world's population enjoy free press. 13%. Partly free press is available to 41% of the population, and 46% live in a not free media. Global trends also indicate that global freedom of the press has dropped to its lowest level in the 12 years. And I do believe that EU, but also the Nordic countries and the Baltic countries, can work with other Western countries as an example for the rest of the world, where complete freedom of press is an exception rather than a rule. Although Europe is one of the regions with free press, recent developments related to countries' internal policies and the spread of international terrorism and violent extremism have recently started to affect the freedom of expression and free media here as well. Freedom is connected to security, and finding balance between the freedom of expression and security is becoming increasingly difficult. It's a question where we don't have complete answer today. Where is the right balance? It's a question with which we're tackling, with which we're working daily, and we have to work with that subject. Freedom of expression is one of the basic principles of democracy, and it cannot be sacrificed in the interests of security. Finding and maintaining balance is the biggest challenge for all countries. And here, cooperation, but also strategic communication are crucial. In addition to censorship, the freedom of press is under threat because of cyber attacks and online violence, which discourages journalists, but also bloggers, from expressing freely their opinion online. The popularity of social media has further aggravated this trend. It is easy to share one's message online, but at the same time, social media gives people a sense of impunity, making it easier to attack anyone whose opinion is not liked. Women and children are here especially vulnerable groups. The freedom of expression and press is directly linked to what is happening in the digital environment. And again, not that I'm very fond of rankings, but I think sometimes it's good to bring examples from rankings. And in the same Freedom House report on internet freedom, Estonia is ranking number 2 after Iceland. I don't know your rankings, and we're happy about that. For years we were number 1, but then you just lose the sense of competition. You need somebody who is a step ahead. So we're happy that Iceland is there. Now we have somebody to catch and somebody with whom we're having friendly competition. We find it important to protect human rights and respect the rule of law also online. And that is also one of the priorities of Estonia's chairmanship in the Council of Europe. Among other things, we are organizing a conference dedicated to internet freedom in September in Strasbourg in cooperation with Germany. And in November, we will have a seminar on child's rights, focusing on children's rights in the digital world. Sometimes we call it cyber hygiene. Children have to know what they can benefit online, but they also have to know what are the challenges and what are the threats once they push the on button. I can continue, but I'll stop here. I'd like to thank you for organizing this seminar. I listened carefully to what Margot said. I'll be listening carefully to what we still have time. Linas and Edgars are going to say. And I think that that's the fora which is appropriate, where it is appropriate to finish a statement by the words of Voltaire. I disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. Thank you.
Madam Minister, thank you very much. You are certainly among the group of friends who stand behind Voltaire, even as the burkini is being challenged. Let us hope that the climate change will make our Baltic Sea warm but also environmentally rich so that we can enjoy it between us. Thank you very much for what you said. Let us turn to Latvia, and I need to, before introducing the minister, just mention that we have Laila Freivalds here, who was Laila Freivalda, who was Minister of Justice and Minister of Foreign Affairs during very critical moments. I recognize you, I see you here. So, Edgars Rinkēvičs, please join us at the podium. Foreign Minister of Latvia. Please, and I challenged Marina on her economic background. You cannot deny it; it's in your CV. But you also have one economic background, although your major career has been in defense. And obviously, defense has become much more important than we ever thought we would have to focus on in this region. Very much welcome to us.
Thank you very much, but like Marina, I have to correct you. I don't have any economic background. I'm historian, by the way. So Linus, maybe you can save the day. But, friends, dear Margot, I first of all want to thank you for inviting you. I think that this is one of the easiest going visits and easiest going days in last months, if not even year, because normally we have to discuss all the issues, be it, security in the region, Brexit, to address complexity of challenges, and this day is actually a day of celebration. Celebration of 25 years of restored independence. I'm very happy to see in the audience the former Minister of Justice, Ms. Freivalds, who almost 25 years ago was in Riga to change the plaque. The Swedish consulate overnight became the Swedish embassy. And when I had the meetings earlier today with members of Swedish Parliament, also when we had this trilateral, the Baltic meeting with you, Margot, we were kind of reflecting on history. And one reflection was that actually Sweden was the first country to send diplomats, not called ambassadors, called vice consuls, consuls. There was a very strange name in Riga for that Swedish consulate. It was sub-consulate of Swedish Consulate General in Leningrad, a part of Swedish embassy in Soviet Union, but still I have to say that those people who were working in the Baltic states, and in Latvian case it was Lars Freden, who was actually doing better jobs than any ambassador sometimes is doing under the normal circumstances. So we are very grateful to Sweden for that support 25 plus years ago. We are also very grateful to Sweden for the assistance in the first years after regaining of independence in building our defense capabilities, in assisting in reform process, in actually also fostering our integration in the European Union and in a broader sense in the European family. But this is going also much deeper in the history. It's also what Marina was mentioning. That's about the end of World War II and Sweden being the country that was receiving many refugees crossing the Baltic Sea at the end of the Second World War in 1945, going to the island of Gotland, where there is also a specific monument built for those refugees from Estonia and from Latvia that got shelter, that got home here in Sweden, or actually continued. So to this, I think we can speak about really the deep historic relations we have had so far. But this was also the day not only about history, not only about past, not only about celebration of the history. We were very much looking also forward to the future. And I think that now, with complexity of challenges we have, starting with situation in the east of Europe, in the south of Europe, the internal challenges to the European Union, also Brexit, we as the group of Nordic Baltic countries have come to the conclusion that we actually need to speak about not anymore, kind of close cooperation, but actually we need to speak about deeper integration, be it security, economy, be it energy, or be it education or culture, but actually we need to form the kind of community of Nordic Baltic countries that is community, as we discussed it earlier today, the community of the fastest growing economy, the most innovative community in the European Union. As of today's subject, you have heard a true propaganda warfare by Estonia. That has been a great information warfare campaign ever. Marina, we are living in post-factual society where nobody cares what the facts are, but everyone really cares the way how you present it. So congratulations, you did the great work, but still I have to say that you are not doing enough. Iceland being the number one, way to go. I don't even want to discuss where we are, but I can really say that Estonia can do much better when it comes to internet freedom related to Iceland.
But Iceland recognized us, we can't.
Yes, Iceland was the first one to recognize us as well. But if we speak about today's subject, I think that this is really one of very important subjects when it comes to both. When it comes to the current situation in the Baltic states, in Nordic states, I think that we have learned a lot from Nordic states in the beginning of 1990s how to actually address some of key issues of democratic societies, and freedom of media being one of them. Actually, at one point, Swedish concern, Bonnier concern, was owning one of our newspapers in Latvia, but then actually it sold the newspaper to some other owners. So to some extent, the modern Latvian journalism, I believe also to some extent Estonian and Lithuanian journalism, is based on the best practices of the Nordic journalism, and this is important. At the same time, I think that we also all recognize all the difficulties that currently printed media has, actually the whole media business has in the modern world. And I think that the first line of media freedom comes in promotion of media freedom back at home, protecting it. And even as a politician, I really hate journalists, I can admit it. They always ask the wrong questions. They always want to get more information that I want to give them. But still, I think that we all understand that the success of the Baltic states so far, building political economic, social systems as we know them. And as Marina said in the meeting earlier today, that to some extent we have been so successful, all three Baltic countries, even with all the issues we know we are still facing, the fight against corruption, also the rule of law, all those problems we all admit, we have been so successful that it has actually made the life more difficult to other countries in the Eastern Partnership, in the Western Balkans that should follow. But actually we are also currently under the constant attack. And unfortunately media is being used as the instrument to undermine the very basic of our societies. I'm talking here about the use of social media by terrorist and extremist groups on one hand, but I'm also talking about state media that I would even not call the state-owned media, but actually state propaganda tools, like we have Russia Today, we have Sputnik International, those Russia-owned, government-funded, and government-guided instruments to undermine the very fundamental principles of our own societies, using actually our own tools against us. And I think this is one of key challenges that we are all facing right now, how to protect basic values on one hand, and how to actually address this challenge in the long run. I believe that Margot and Marina have already touched upon very basic issues that we are working at. Back in Latvia, the Strategic Communications Center of Excellence of NATO has been established last year and is actually very successful in analyzing the key challenges we are facing as free societies and the ways how to respond. I'm very happy to say that also we see Sweden joining this Center of Excellence and also providing its input. At the European Union level, we have the task force set up under the auspices of the High Representative for Foreign and Security Policy, assisting actually to both the European Union and also to the countries of the Eastern Partnership. Those are right things. Then we have also journalist community in Latvia that is organizing itself in the Baltic Center of Excellence for Media Excellence, and also working on more critical thinking, because nowadays, and I believe later today you will be shown the film master plan that shows how actually easily it is to get an information out, to manipulate with it, and then how difficult it is actually to get the truth. And to some extent, election campaigns, both in Europe as well as in the United States, are showing that today, very often, it's not about facts anymore. It's actually about the way how you present your message and how well you are putting it forward. So we are in a constant situation of challenges and finding responses. So this discussion today, I think, is also very important from that point of view. I didn't look at statistics to boast. I will do that next time. But let me say one thing, that we in the Baltic region, in the Nordic Baltic region, are enjoying the highest numbers of media freedom if compared to other parts of the world. To some extent, as one of Latvian journalists, when the latest poll, or not even poll, but kind of information about media freedom was published, said to some extent it is because of our own achievement, but to some extent it is because also situation in other regions in the world has deteriorated quite considerably. And I think that one thing, if we look to the future of Europe, to our future cooperation between Nordic and Baltic countries, or talking about Nordic-Baltic community, would be not only to work as one group, as the coalition of like-minded nations within European Union, promoting the further integration of European Union, but also using our combined knowledge and experience to assist to countries in the eastern and southern neighborhood of European Union, not only when it comes to practical implementation of reforms, but also to assist to the development of free media. During our presidency and during the Eastern Partnership Summit we hosted in May, we had the first meeting of Eastern Partnership journalists or so-called media forum. That's going to be followed also in next years by other presidencies, but only then I think we all realized that we can talk a lot about technicality of reform. If you don't have media as the watchdog, if you don't have media as the one that is reporting the true story, the true state of reform process of political development, then actually the whole reform process is doomed to fail. I think that this is one lesson we have had on our own experience in 1990s. This is something that we can pass, and still we all should understand that this is an issue we have to fight even back home in every country, in the Baltic region, in the Nordic region, because always there is going to be some attacks against media, always there is going to be some discussions about it, but still I think that even being the politician, as I said, and not really falling in love with media, I have to acknowledge that this is one of the most important instruments of free society. With those words, I know that now Linus is going to come and totally trash everything we have said so far with his own vision. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Minister Rinkēvičs, and for putting the finger on the theme of today, and thank you for your beautiful tie. I don't know that the audience noticed the colors of your tie, but certainly I did.
My colleague noticed.
Very good. So we turn to Lithuania, and I cannot, please, Minister, I cannot but mention that I was there on the 21st of August 1991 when Lena Hjelm-Wallén, then Foreign Minister, was there with Vytautas Landsbergis and ripped off the sheet as we turned into an embassy and the recognition. 25 years ago, much has happened. Minister, share with us.
Thank you, Mr. Karlsson. Thank you to the Institute of National Relations for arranging this event. I have denied everything what Edgar said so far, but I have no time because I was told I should be short. So maybe I'll say a few words. First of all, thanking Margot for excellent hospitality. We really feel like at home. And it's more and more feeling as at home because we are really becoming the same family, and we talked about that today, that this Nordic-Baltic brand becomes really quite mature. And we saw not just celebrating this beginning of this 25 years, but we also, through the course of that dynamics, and we slowly went from format of 5+3 to the 8, and now it's Nordic-Baltic 8. It's wanted partner to many to meet, be it Americans or Brits or Japanese, and we're really contributing to that by our so to say concrete deals and deeds, and this is really something to celebrate, to tell to others. Also I'd like to mention that since we're talking about media freedom, it has to do with our priorities very much, and it recalls me our membership in United Nations Security Council, where we were 2 years, and among priorities was rule of law, protection of civilians, especially women, children. But in the context of rule of law, we selected item protection of journalists. It's not very popular in some countries because dynamics not very good, statistics as well, and situations worsening. It directly has to do with the media freedom, if you agree with me. And you know, some time ago we had statistics when journalists were killed or detained in the conflict areas where war is going on. Now we have something also in the countries which are relatively calm, just relatively. But if you agree, this is really a symptom of the health of the society. And why I'm saying this? Because the priorities are the same, since we have the same family. And wholeheartedly congratulated Margot with the election in the Security Council. And we really trust you that you'll really continue all these works with regard to human rights. And in particular, I'd like to focus on protection of journalists, because it's really very concrete and tangible and very clearly describes the situation. We really sometimes have to answer ourselves very simple questions. What means propaganda? What means counter-propaganda? When we started to talk about counter-propaganda, so some of our colleagues said, are we going to do European propaganda? I said, no, it's not our rules of the game, it's something different. We have to counter what is happening, and if we see that we can see distorted picture or part of the true, or I would say lie is not alternative point of view. Because if somebody says that somebody is lying, but you know, it's my opinion, it's freedom of speech, but it's not alternative point of view, which we should take it very seriously. And damage made by lies, by propaganda is so big that sometimes somebody even do not realize. There are some examples I can mention. For instance, I'm really convinced that if in conventional war it was kind of, so to say, method to prepare by artillery attack, you know, and then real war is going. Now artillery attack is not used, but brainwashing is used. And people are prepared, same as it was in Crimea. Locals were, you know, afraid that bandits and fascists coming from Kiev to kill them, to kill Russians living there. They were convinced, they were very happy to welcome Russian soldiers because they saved them. It was part of this propaganda war, and the effect was really huge. Or let's say when we are trying to, again, our neighbors, Russians, usually very gifted in this game, because paying big money for that, and from the budget and from companies like Gazprom, and trying to suggest to all of us that we have to reshape all European security architecture, to start to create that from the scratch, from the zero, forgetting all these rules or international law which was established. And frankly speaking, we cannot be guided by the rules which were invented by some country. We have to be guided by international law. Again, media plays a role if media is active enough. And I also would say that, since I cannot speak too long, what we can do, the question again. We have to take it very seriously, because it's becoming a weapon. It's a war. Information war is going on, and I can say that we are losing this war so far. We are capable to win, but we are losing because we are underestimating the power, the effect, the damage it could be done. We have to make sure that our work is, or 4 A's, I would say. 4 A's could describe our approach. It's awareness, assertiveness, alternatives, and accountability. Awareness, that means we should inform. People should know what's happening in reality. Assertiveness, also showing our active approach and exposure of facts. Alternatives, it's very important, because when talking especially to Russian-speaking population and those who are consuming Russian state media controlled outlets really have no alternatives. And so why this social pool, sometimes very strangely described in that country? Why this opinion is very strange, again, not understandable to many, but understandable to those who have the single source of information. And also accountability. We cannot just live it without lies. We have to deny facts, because if you repeat lies 15 times, it's becoming true. And frankly speaking, we are really too passive. We are too passive in many aspects. Look and wait approach is more comfortable, but it's a privilege. We really should be more proactive in order to defend not just our policies, but also to tell the story, to tell the truth. Coming back to the first point, what I'm talking now, it's not about something what was achieved in 25 years being together in this Nordic Baltic family. It's something what waiting us ahead. It's also not less important. So we have to celebrate, we have something to be proud, but we also should be united, and it's our moral duty to address challenges which are waiting for us ahead. And this is not less important. So looking at you, at those who came here from not only locals but from Tallinn, from Riga. And I see Emanuele Zinger is here, Member of Parliament. He was dispatched to Sweden after January events, just in case, because it was uncertain. Again, yet another proof how Sweden was important to all of us, not just standing by, but very actively engaged, and very tangible assistance was provided. Now, time to think about those who are suffering today, who have problems, who are really fighting for their freedom, for their free choice, who are sometimes really forgotten or neglected or underestimated, at least to be said. Those who know what that means, those who know price of freedom, those who went through that themselves, they have moral duty to work for that, to fight for that, and frankly, we are, who else if not us, to address these issues. Okay, I promise to be short.
Thank you, Minister. Deep gratitude to the three visiting ministers, gratitude to Margot. Indeed, we do face new challenges to the freedom of speech, and every generation has to fight its fight. We recall that we are here partly in celebration of the 250 years since the constitutional foundation of the freedom of speech and the freedom of the printed word in Sweden, but I would recall that it was actually someone from Österbotten, from East Bothnia, who wrote that part of the of our constitution, Anders Kudenius, and this is of course something that binds us together in the Baltic Sea. We are also here in the context of the Baltic Sea Festival, where music is meant to open our ears and our thinking, and I would therefore also like to pay tribute to the Baltic Sea Festival and Helena Westman, who is up here, who is the chief organizer of something very special in Stockholm at this time of the year, and with whom we are very happy to work. Thank you, Helena. Now, we go to the substance of the matter, and I will not speak, but I will turn it over to you, Gina Lindberg, who actually every day works with the freedom of speech. Gina, known to everyone, the director of international affairs at the Swedish Public Radio. I turn it over to you, please.
Thank you, Mats. Thank you, politicians. Now it's time for the journalists to take over. I welcome the panel up to the stage. And so my name is Gina Lindberg. I'm head of foreign news with the Swedish Radio, Public Service Radio. And we have a distinguished panel of publishers and journalists here today. We have Silla Benke, head of Swedish Radio and my boss, and I want to thank you for organizing the Baltic Sea Festival and co-hosting this event with the ministry and with the institute. Peter Wolodarski, editor-in-chief of Daily Dagens Nyheter. Inga Springe, hello, founder of the Baltic Center for Investigative Journalism, Re-Baltica in Latvia, in Riga. Darja Saar, from Estonia, head of the Russian language TV channel ETV+. And Monica Garbačiauskaitė-Budrienė, hello, editor-in-chief of the news portal Delphi in Vilnius, in Lithuania. Welcome, all of you. And I would like to start by asking you for a short answer to a very big question. And then we will dig deeper into this issue. But how would you describe the climate for media and freedom of speech in your respective countries right now? Monica first, please.
I would describe it good. Of course, it can always be better, and there's always Iceland ahead of you. But you know, when it very much depends on what you compare to. And when I went to a seminar in Qatar, which also included Arabic region, and I heard of journalists that are jailed in Egypt, and Turkey has big problems, then I realized that we basically have no problems. But on the other hand, we realized that freedom of speech is such a thing that you have to fight every day, because some obstacles occur, and politicians are very much also eager to limit that. So it's a constant fight.
Mm-hmm. Daria, how would you like to describe it?
I will describe it challenging, but as we know in Chinese language, you know, the problem and opportunity is the one word. So I will say that it's really the time when from one side we have a lot of problems to deal, but from another side I think it's beginning of something new, redefining the different terms in the field of the journalism. And actually I hope that we will come out from this current situation much strongly. So it will be the short answer, and I will try to describe more deeply in forthcoming discussion.
Thank you. Inga?
In my opinion, it's also very challenging, but not anymore, because like it was in last years when we were in financial crisis because of not enough money, which is still a big problem. But I would agree with what our foreign minister said, and not because we agreed before, but because people don't care about facts anymore. You can openly lie about Brexit, Donald Trump can openly lie about many facts, but people still like him and vote for him. So I think this is the next big challenge for us, how we deliver news now, how we reach our audience, and how we convince them that they should think critically about facts they can read everywhere now.
Peter?
I think the forces of digitalization are creating great opportunities for everyone in every country to express their own opinions and report. I mean, you don't need a printing press to do that anymore. You don't need to have a big house to broadcast anymore. You have your mobile phone. But at the same time, those same forces are really challenging the fundamental business model of a media organization, of a traditional media organization, which makes it increasingly challenging to be a professional journalist, to find employment. Mm-hmm. The number of professional journalists is going down throughout the Western world, and that creates a void. And the risk is that void is now filled by propaganda, by politicians that want to undermine the liberal democracy. So I think it's the answer to your question is really it's a mixed bag, and it's our duty to protect the freedoms that we cherish and to make sure that European countries, not only the Nordic region, that we go in the right direction and not take steps backwards, because there is a risk.
Silla, what's your take on it?
Well, since Peter and I are from the same country, I'm going to broaden it a bit. And I'm usually a very optimistic person, but I've been in this profession for 30 years now, and I see that we are really backtracking in a lot of ways. And I'm really worried about freedom of speech and freedom of expression, basically on 3 levels. If you look at the world, the whole world, there are some countries now where they don't respect democratic values at all, and where it's almost impossible today to work as a national journalist and also to go there as a foreign correspondent, because then you are either being kidnapped or you're being killed. And then I'm thinking about countries like Syria or Afghanistan, for instance. But then also, if you look at the European level, there are several countries now, preferably in the eastern part, where they are going from a more democratic society into a more closed society out of political reasons, and where we have seen over the last months, actually, hundreds and hundreds of public service journalists losing their jobs because the regime wants to control the public service institutions and backtrack them into state broadcasters. And then if you look at the Nordic countries, I mean, there are more violence, more physical threats, and more online harassments, also in Sweden. We have done a survey a couple of months ago together with the publishers organization, asking our members, and 1/3 of the journalists in Sweden have experienced threats. And it's not once in a while, it's several times a week. And of course, a scared journalist is a poor journalist because they're going to go into self-censorship, and we are going to see things that are not going to be exposed and covered also in this country that should have been exposed and covered.
Mm-hmm. We'll get back to social media. Daria, I want to ask you, as head of this newly started Russian language channel, ETV+, you want to offer an independent news channel for the minority. Why was there a need for this in Estonia and in your country, do you think?
I think we come here to the main challenges, what we experience right now, but I need a little bit to explain the situation in Estonia. It's quite often asked what we need, the Russian language television in Estonia, and it's quite easy. The journalism and media is one way of participating in society, and it's quite important to mention that in Estonia we didn't have the chance for a long time. For example, the last year Estonian television celebrated 60 years of anniversary of establishing Estonian television. At the same time, for all that period of time, the Russian language population in Estonia was connected, having that link to the TV channels that were broadcasting from Moscow. We never had in Estonia regional Russian language television. And as we all know, the television is the most influential media channel and the more effective media channel. So you can imagine actually that Russian language population didn't participate in that way in rethinking what is going on in society, getting the information. We are all the time connected to the TV channels in Moscow, meaning that we all time will eventually be there, not in Estonia. From another side, if you will take a look until the last year to the structure of Estonian television, it was quite remarkable that it was just altogether the whole staff of Estonian television, the national broadcast, including 2 TV stations, 5 radio stations, and 2 onlines. And if we go to the part of television, having altogether 700 employees, it was only 2 directors and some technical staff who are Russian language people. So you can see the reflection of society in Estonian television. So that means that Russian language people were not visible for society, expressing their opinion, telling what, if we speak about the freedom of expression, telling what they feel, in what way, how they feel, and what they think will be the better way actually for society to develop, or what they see could be done in another way. So I think I explained plenty enough, what was the reason, what is the inner reason really to establish that kind of channel is really to strengthen the society, to increase the cohesion in society, to increase, this level of engagement of Russian language population in Estonian society, to become a part of that and to become influential part of that, not to be just, the object that somebody decides upon them what and how they need to live, but really to participate and create, the news agenda, to create the political agenda in the state, so have this comprehensive and normal life in society.
And so far, how's it going? What have the reactions been?
Well, it was quite hard, I need to admit. First, when I participated in discussion about the Russian language TV channel in Estonia, it actually reflected, the situation, the current situation. So most of the people were saying, we don't need that TV channel. Estonian state is trying to do something like, trying to convince ourselves that in what way we need to live or something like that. And I can understand the people because it was untrust against the government. Nevertheless, that ETV Plus is actually, it's part of national broadcasting, meaning that actually it's paid by taxpayer and it's financed by parliament. So it's under control of the people, but it shows very well, the relationship between Russian language population in Estonia and the political elite. We see the mistrust. We see that people were arguing also that kind of channel was necessary instantly after the regaining the independence. Meaning that it would be natural that people participate in the life of society. But the truth was that the idea to launch the TV channel, or I will say it would be more correct to say that this understanding that the Russian language population in Estonia is not an object, is subject, that it's able, to be independent, to participate in society, came after the Crimea events and after Ukraine events. So it was understandable that it is necessary to do something, because in another way, the people will be in the same situation as Ukraine. But I think that the TV channel could not be efficient in that way, because TV channel is really a media, a journalism, not a way of solving political problems, because people need, real political decisions to start to trust the government.
And Daria, is this also a way to meet propaganda? Because all of the ministers have touched on this topic of propaganda. Is this a way of meeting it?
No, absolutely not. Again, ETV Plus is really attempt of Russian language people to start to rethink their position in society and start to rethink the media agenda in society. I think it's not the right way to think that the journalists are the warriors. I have a very good example from Latvia. One of my colleagues, Vadim Radionov, who is working for LTV7 and for Radio Baltcom, he wrote once an article when he actually recognized how the journalist feels themselves in right now in the current situation. Very often we are blamed by different sides, for example, by people who are influenced by Kremlin, by people who are really influenced by, have very narrow position or narrow-minded by one position, and they are blaming the journalist from both sides for the same content. And the journalists very often, when you ask us what is challenging, the challenging thing is really to stay professional, to make the journalism in the situation where the society is divided and blaming from all the sides you for your professional work. And I also will bring here one opinion of Mariana Maximovskaya, who is a former NTV Russian TV channel reporter and presenter. She actually left her profession. She decided that she will not do any more the journalism, just because in Russia it's really, really difficult, to stay journalist, because all the time you feel that pressure from all the sides and blaming you that you are, you need to choose the side. But actually, as a journalist, you cannot do it.
And when it comes to challenges, Inga, you mentioned the fact resistance. The problem with that people don't care about facts, you said. What do you mean by that, Inga?
Yeah.
Yes, I mean that people don't care anymore about what we are writing, and I think this is the biggest problem nowadays, as maybe you have heard about this effect called echo chamber, when nowadays people can choose sources they follow the information, so they don't see anymore like in old times. It was one TV at home, 3 TV channels, at least it was in Latvia, and you have to see all the opinions. Nowadays we just follow certain people or sources we believe, and we don't see the other opinions. And I read one Guardian journalist wrote after Brexit, he went on Facebook and he wanted to find people who were glad about Brexit, and he couldn't because the search engine was so strong, he couldn't get it through. So he asked his friend who worked actually on Facebook to help him find other opinions. And this is very problematic because this is when we just follow the things we like and we don't see other opinions anymore. And this is what we can feel in Latvia enormously. And this is also why this propaganda so effectively work. Because I really get very angry, but I pressure myself to follow some of these people who really believe that World Health Organization teach our children to masturbate, or like that family values are really going down and Sweden is importing pedophilia in Latvia and so on. You know, all this bullshit, what comes out of this, especially in Russian language websites. And these people really believe because they don't see other sources of information. And what's even problematic now is that it doesn't relate and doesn't affect not just only Russian speakers, it affects also Latvian speakers. And for example, last year in Latvia, the legislation was changed. There was changes in education law, which banned to use immoral education materials at school. And this was actually the result of all of this information which went through. And when, for example, we speak about these family values, it's very smart ideology because it unites pro-Russian people and also very nationalistic people, because who is against family values or traditional values? Everyone is for it, and this is how we can see how it all works. And I'm very sorry to say this, but what I was surprised when I did research on this, even smart people, it's not like uneducated people believe in this. I spoke with our parliament member who forced this anti-gay law in Latvia because she really believes in everything which is said on internet. And I think this is one of the biggest challenges which we have to do as media now. And I'm glad that I can see that also mainstream media start to report about this. Like, you see, this is lies, this is lie. It starts to somehow comes out, but I think this will be and there are a lot of discussions about media literacy and Estonia is mentioned as examples that you have this at schools, but we will have to do the same because even educated people don't know how to consume and critically analyze the information.
And how do you do to meet that? Monica, what do you say? How do you do to meet these bubbles that people are in, following media that only contribute to what they already think?
We discussed with Inga before the seminar about about these bubbles and about how information is now quickly spreading in social media and how superficial sometimes it is. And to my own surprise is that the information that starts up being viral there sometimes lead to direct, very material consequences, like be it propaganda, urging people to go to fight to Donetsk, for example, or be it, as we had in Lithuania case, just kind of a citizen movement calling to boycott shopping centers, which ended up in a real boycott and so on. So I think that there are challenges and for journalists as well, because they are now kind of competing with the social networks and with information that is there, and to do fact-checking information, checking, it takes time. So and time is something that we don't have, anymore these days. So it's also pressure to do it as quick as possible, and so this is a challenge for journalists to be effective, to be quality and quick.
Mm-hmm. And how affected are you at Delphi by propaganda and trying to meet it?
I think that the most direct thing that we face in Lithuania and Delphi is mostly trolls that we face in internet comments and in Facebook. So it's very obvious. So there's still a discussion in society, should the comments should be only registered and so on. I myself personally don't believe in it, because we very much see how trolls overcome registration in Facebook, and how they troll around, how they threaten actually the journalists. And you must know very well the story of Jessica Aro, also in Finland, who wrote about this troll fabrics and wanted to do crowd sourcing, and how they attacked her. And a week ago there was an attack also on a journalist, Yulia Latinina in Moscow, who is writing about this topic, for example, and it very much turned into material attack. So this is basically the problem, that we face directly, and of course the propaganda. I'm glad that our government actually have already made some steps in enforcing some laws on putting fines on the TVs that spread propaganda and doing steps like that. Before that, some of the programs were sustained for some time, and we were criticized for this decision, but I sometimes think that it's a good way to do it if the propaganda and disinformation is being spread. So it's not a media freedom. It's not about media freedom. It's about spreading the lies. So so it must be the tackling this issue is, as just the minister mentioned before. So it's really a serious issue and a war which we must take part in, and it's difficult to fight because it has no rules, because we as a democratic society, we cannot take the same rules as an authoritarian society, as Kremlin does, because they have no limits whatsoever. They think, they do, they lie, and to deconstruct it takes time. So, and overall, after annexation of Crimea, after we really felt a real threat near our borders, so it showed basically to what our society, how healthy it is, how citizens are really conscious to neglect or accept this propaganda. It's very important. I mean, like these situations like this show on how resistant you are.
Mm. If we broaden the discussion not only to the Baltic countries but to the European Union, we have seen media development in Hungary, in Poland, that is quite worrisome, including laws that have increased government control over state media. Peter and Silla, what's your take on the situation in these European countries?
Well, the first thing you have to do is you have to be very distinguished. Do you have state media or do you have public service broadcasters? And that's something completely different. And that's what we see happening now in both Hungary and in Poland and in Croatia and so on, that the regime, after a change of government, want to backtrack it, leave public service broadcasting and really truly make them a mouthpiece of the regime and make them state media. And therefore I think that in countries like ours, in Sweden, that we have to say that this is not okay. Because in the situation we now hear described, I think public service broadcasting, and of course I say this since I'm a DG of Swedish Radio, is more important than ever, because our mission is really to be the open arena, to be the center for exchange of views between all kinds of different opinions. And we have changed our policy since 3-4 years back, saying, well, the most important thing is not that the audience comes to us, that they tune in us on FM or go to our website. The most important thing is that our content get to the audience. And that's a different way of thinking. And therefore, it's really, really vital that in these countries that you're talking about, that they have a remit that allows them to have a really broad aspect of subjects, and that it is really entitled to publish everywhere and anywhere, which means also on social media and also online.
Peter, do you see a risk of it spreading to other countries?
Of course, the risks are big, I think, and I mean, media freedom cannot definitely not be taken for granted, and it can change pretty rapidly. Mm-hmm. When I started my current job in 2013, I did an interview with the then Turkish President Gül in Ankara, and I must say that they didn't ask me what I was supposed to ask the president. They didn't intervene afterwards. They didn't have any opinions about. They might have opinions about what I was doing, but they didn't tell me about their opinions. Then 2 years after that, and now we know what happened in Turkey. But that's post Gül. 2 years later, I did an interview with the Indian president in Delhi, and one subject that came up was an old question of corruption. the Bofors scandal that came up during the interview, and they asked me after the interview to take out that segment from the interview. And the Indian ambassador even said to me that there was a state visit by the Indian president to Sweden planned. She told me that the entire visit might be cancelled if I don't take out that segment of the interview. Then last year, that was this year, I didn't do the interview, but we did an interview with the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. And I think they called me 20 times before the publication of the interview. And
to say what?
I enjoy that. Because I really enjoy it, and I tell them, look, you can have your opinions, but this is how it works. They put pressure on you, they want to read it, they want to change things, they want to look at the pictures. They really know how to bully people. And if you're not strong enough as an editor or as a journalist, they will be successful in their attempts to censor or influence or change things. So it showed to me, okay, so this is how it works for me as a Swedish journalist when we write on a subject that is important for the Russians. So how does it work for a Russian journalist in Russia?
That's why we have some of them in Riga now, Medusa.
So you really need to stand up for these freedoms. And I think it's very important that all the foreign ministers that were on stage here earlier, that they said what they said about media freedoms. Because we also have our issues here in Sweden. 2 weeks ago, one of our photographers was arrested in Stockholm by police officers, and they took his camera and looked at photos that were taken by him. And today, the Attorney General started a investigation into this matter. But you need to fight for these freedoms every day. And the fight looks a little bit different in different countries, but it's not without the fight here in Sweden, I have to tell you.
I mean, we have to realize that internet has some really, really great values to society, but it has some downsides as well. And if you look just 10, 15 years ago, then a journalist decided how a story should be covered and brought it back to the audience. Now this is not necessary anymore. So even all the evil forces within a country can spread their propaganda so easily by posting their own statements through internet, and then you have all these filter bubbles that we were talking about earlier, and that makes life really, really tricky. How could a normal citizen today decide what is right and what is wrong, what is true and what is false? That is becoming much, much more difficult. And that's the backside of internet.
What do you think is most needed when it comes to protect freedom of the press and freedom of speech? Inga, would you like to start?
Well, at least in Latvia, we need money.
The money.
Very simple. We need money to do quality journalism. And when all this thing in Crimea happened, I think for the last 2 years, I've been in almost every embassy, different other countries in Latvia, because everyone was concerned and worried what to do. And yes, thank you very much to Scandinavian countries. We have Media Excellency Center, which is, at first, actually, I was quite skeptical because I thought I'm fed up with these trainings by foreign experts coming in Latvia, because I know how to do investigative journalism. We don't have money to do this one. But I just recently, as a colleague from Media Excellency Center told me a story. What they are doing is they go into the editorials now and do trainings, and not like just announcing there will be seminar and come on. And they went to Daugavpils, which is the second biggest city in Latvia, and most of the people are Russian speakers there. And they went to the biggest media editorial, and they showed one story done by a BBC journalist, Natalia Antaleva. And she did a story because this Russian media said that there was, in Ukraine, was killed one girl, and Natalia wanted to see what actually happened. So she went to that place and she discovered that this kind of killing never happened. And she even found out the journalists from Russian state TV and discovered the faces. They told that they faked this story. And my colleagues showed this piece to this Daugavpils media journalists. I don't want to name it. And the first reaction by these journalists from Daugavpils was like, how did she, Natalia Antaleva, how did she dare to do it for her colleagues, for Russian journalists? So it still shows like how far we are, some of Latvian journalists, how far we are still from what's ethical and real journalism. So one thing is this training, but the other thing is what we really need to do needs is finances for qualitative media. And this is what I'm always, when I'm invited to speak in different places, what I'm saying, I really believe that there should be some fund in European Union where we could apply and compete for financing to do some investigative reporting, because currently European Union spends 40 million euros per year to announce and promote European Union. And just a few years ago I was really skeptical about this, but now after Brexit I really believe there should be such kind of funding. Maybe it's not so effective, but we still inform people what European Union is doing. But there should be also some finances to do quality content. And we can see in Poland what's happening now, in Hungary, and I assume my colleagues, we are a network from Balkan countries, from Ukraine, from Russia. It is a big problem, these finances. We know how to do investigative journalism, but we need some finances to do this.
That's a direct and concrete message to the audience. Thank you. And Daria, what do you say? What is most needed in Estonia, do you think?
I just started to think about what Inga said. Yes, money is important, but I'm afraid it's not the only thing. We need to actually, I had last week a conversation with Angela Merkel, and we were just talking about the freedom of speech and talking about the propaganda, and that matters. And it was interesting what she said. She said that actually we need to understand what actually propaganda is. What we mean by saying propaganda. In the case of Russian Federation propaganda, we need psychologically to understand what is the reason of propaganda. In the case of Kremlin is desire of political leader from one side to look better than the Russia actually is, and from another side actually to show to everyone that European countries are much worse than they actually are. So to convince everyone that Russia is good and all others are bad, and actually all others are enemies. Not enemies, but they are guilty for what is going on in Russia. Why Russian people are unhappy, why they don't have one thing or another. It's mostly the Barack Obama is guilty, the Angela Merkel is guilty, and so on. So it's like being a victim of all others. So it's the most easy way actually to explain why, for example, Russians don't have roads, or for example, why the officials take briberies for providing the public service, and so on. So in Estonia and Baltic states, I know that also in Scandinavian states, it's a wide range system of so-named propaganda. It's baltnews.ee, .lv, it's Sputnik, it's Russian Today. It's quite wide activity in social networks. And I think that the only thing that we can, how we can manage in that conditions, it's really stay true to the principle of being journalists, really making proper your job. And if it's on strategical level, when we come to operative level, the first thing, I'm not talking right now about the journalists, but I'm talking about the society in general, is education. So it's critical thinking and media education for children. Children need to understand how television or how media is made. They need to understand how really, that picture that is coming from their smartphone. Dear friends, they don't watch television anymore, if it's a surprise for you. At least in Estonia, they have the small screens and they all the time watching all the stuff there. And the another thing is really social networks. And again, as you said before, that it's a great opportunity, but actually it's really the bubbleization. I'm
going to stop you there, Daria, but more nuanced reporting, more critical thinking, more education.
One aspect as well is cooperation. Mm-hmm. You know, a year ago, I cannot imagine that actually we will do a great things with LTV7, with our Latvian colleagues. And really would like to make the same with Lithuanian colleagues. But for the moment, we managed really to create the ring of Russian language journalists in Baltic countries. And starting from January, we are launching the new TV show that will be produced in cooperation with LTV7, meaning having weekly current affairs show. So money is important. That's more important is actually the cooperation between Russian language journalists, at least, and all of journalists in European Union, really exchanging the content, really creating, common projects. Mm-hmm. Because Russia is big, but we need to unite our resources.
I'm going to let the audience ask some questions in a while, but I want to ask Monica as well. What is the most important thing to do?
I would say that there are several things. We don't have such a big probably issues with Russian media as, local Russian media as do in Estonia and in Latvia. Mm-hmm. But still, when observing the propaganda that flows from Russia directly through Kremlin TV channels, there was Europe and also Lithuania has come to the point where they realize that something needs to be done and some financing is coming up. So I think that we should think of effectiveness of this financing of the programs. The government should think about it and, have some goals in front of them on how they want to use this money and what they want to achieve. Also, I think it's not only about the media freedom, it's also about integration of the minorities in the society, which includes different other programs, not only media, because you need to work with the young people. And also, I also agree with Inga that we need money to do all these kind of researches and and the trips to Russia. Also, for example, in Delphi case, we really did this couple of really good projects traveling to Crimea recently and reporting from there, showing what changed after annexation, how people do live there, and we need to really find inventive forms, interesting forms to present serious content. Because the problem is that if you want to speak to audience about propaganda, they wouldn't listen. They don't care. This word is killing. It's so boring that people don't want to read this anymore. So we have to find another way of comparing these two states, why they shouldn't miss Soviet times anymore, because the life there is miserable and sometimes and it's not the same as here and so on and so forth.
Thank you, Monica. And I wonder if there are any questions from the audience. I think we have a microphone somewhere over here. Please raise your hand if you have a question over here.
Yes, my name is Björn Wallström. I'd like to put a question to Darja regarding the ETV+. Is that considered to be an anti-Russian propaganda from the Estonian state?
The editors and our team who are making ETV+, we are considering ourselves as independent journalists who are making journalism. As I said it before, people actually what they're waiting really good quality journalism. And it's not the question to the ETV+, because with our work we justify that we really provide very objective journalism and being a watchdog of our society, what is going on in our society in Estonia, what the politicians doing, what is going on in Estonia and abroad. And I think that it's that kind of question is not relevant.
Any more questions?
Can I ask?
Over here.
Hello, my name's Alistair Scrutton. I work for Reuters in the Nordics and Baltics. I'd be interested to know, you talked about money. Are you finding ways of making money through doing investigations? Are you finding new avenues? Are you finding there's an interest for people to fund? We are seeing fantastic kind of investigative units springing about. The Interceptor is, one. There's lots of money going into the Washington Post investigations. Are you seeing people wanting to invest money into investigative basically, can you make money? Can this be self-perpetuating rather than a charity, should we say?
Well, for example, as a center, I am co-founder and we celebrated actually 5 years a few weeks ago. It's non-profit and it's the only one so far in the Baltics. And we produce our studies for free and give for mainstream media. So we live on donations but the biggest, and we have from different sources money, and so far we have funding. But what comes, for example, we are small countries. We cannot live on crowdfunding, for example. It would be too small. We don't have this tradition of donation, like maybe it's in older European countries. I know Mediapart, for example, which is in France, or Germany, Perpectives, which done really like great job, but they can get really funding from crowdfunding. We are trying, but we are not like selling our stories, because this is how we cannot get funding. And sometimes we were thinking just that we will give for free to publish for bigger, like Guardian or Times, New York Times, this media. But what we learned is that they prefer to send their own journalists to do stories when they read our stories. They don't take our stories. So it's a big strategy how to think about this. But we so far we received different kind of support, like the same Soros Foundation, and then also we choose, for example, when we did investigation about family values, we didn't take money from Soros Foundation. Also, they were ready to do it because we knew that we will be blamed that Soros paid us. That's why we did this project. For example, we got like first time funding from Swedbank in Latvia, and we are doing stories about inequality in education in Latvia for this funding. So we try. We also have a big support from Stockholm School of Economics in Riga. They recently, a few months ago, they gave us a bureau. So now we sit there in the Stockholm School, and we love the head of media center of Stockholm School, Anders Alexandersson. Me and my colleague, we are saying that Anders is the only man we wish him to live forever. He's really like brilliant. So you have really great person for this post. He supports us in any way, but he cannot give us money for actual investigations. He's very open for different experts to bringing there and so on. But so it's challenging.
I have a question for Daria, actually. Could you name numbers of your channel, the ratings comparing to, I don't know, other commercial or other commercial TV channels, so that we can have at least an idea how popular it is? Because I admit I myself am a little bit skeptical of, I don't know, establishing new TV. And since we have also Russian website, Russian language version of Delphi, and we were working for a long time already and have established already some trust and audience, and you can feel that during some turbulences like Crimea or like Georgia in 2008, there is a big interest from abroad also. So, but about TV it's different. So is it rising, or what are the ratings?
If I understand right, so the situation, nevertheless, we are the Baltic states, but it's a little bit different if we come to the part of the composition of the population. So mostly we can compare it with Latvia. We have more or less the same proportions, but it's different with Lithuania. You have, I think, more Polish, but you have more Polish population you need to deal with. If we will start to talk about ETV Plus, first of all, yes, the classical so-named linear television is in some sense is the past. So you need really from the beginning to develop the cross-media platforms, meaning that ETV Plus today is cross-media television, meaning that we are existing on a big screens, on a small screens, including in internet and social media. Based on experience from the first year of ETV Plus, I can tell you that it's quite easy, at least in our example, to increase the numbers, grow the audience of viewers or your subscribers in social media. It's grown very, very fast. We are on different platforms, including Facebook, Instagram, Vkontakte. And I need to admit that actually with 1 year we become number one among Russian language media in Estonia. In internet it's really fastly growing. If we speak about the linear TV, to change the habits of viewers it's quite hard. And I will again stress it's quite hard to change the habits when you have the television that broadcasted from Moscow. You have this habit from your childhood for 60 years. My personal example, I'm raised on Первый канал, the first channel, because I had a lot of really favorite programs that inspired me to become a part of television, like Umnice and Tumniki, and it was the TV programs that I firstly started to make in my school. So it's something that you actually you get with the milk of your mother, and in that way, and it's really take times. The TV specialist saying that it will take something about 3 years to create, that habit among viewers. Another thing you need to take into consideration is actually, nevertheless, are you a public broadcaster or are you any private entity, media entity? You really need to meet the needs of your audience. Meaning the television today is not a tube that you are just, one direction saying what is wrong, what is right, and you are some kind of the God who is saying what is going on. If you're real media, if you're real journalism, you need to start to create a network, a community. You need to start to communicate in both directions with your audience. And if you speak about the television as media, it's not only news or information, it's also interacting, it's also fulfilling different needs like education, entertainment, infotainment, and communication.
Thank you, Daria. I want to take time for one last question, and it's actually from our minister, Margot Wallström. Please.
I never get to ask questions to journalists. So
reversed roles, I like this.
I could not resist. I'm thinking that if we choose to enter that bubble, this is consumers' choice, so to say, and that creates that kind of phenomenon. But there's another phenomenon called click journalism, meaning that it will also shape how journalism is exercised and done. What do you think about that phenomenon? Are we incorrect when we talk about it? Because I can see how that affects also how everything is turned into headlines and only headlines, and then it has to be a drama. There has to be winners and losers. It has to be the words that are chosen become more and more dramatic and pointed. So what do you have to say about this? Should we be worried? Or is there room for being self-critical when journalists and reporters are under such heavy attack? Maybe we all should just defend journalists, but I worry about some of these phenomena as well.
Well, I can see a reason for you to be worried maybe, but also hopeful. Because of course there are some part of this going on, but I actually see it's reversing in the other way. I see a great need, at least among the Swedish audience, for more in-depth, more analysis, more unique voices. And we could see, for instance, after the Brussels attack or what happened in Nice, that immediately the audience that turned to Swedish Radio P1, as you are very familiar with, grow with 50%. I mean, we could have somewhere between 1.8, 2 million people listening to 10 hours of radio because they wanted to know not but what actually happened, because that they already knew, but why, and they wanted that to be put into some perspective. So we see a really huge need, and we also see when our P3 news that are targeting the young audience are providing on the internet alternatives to this, what you call clicks, they also get really huge amount of viewers. They produced a 90-second video on what is actually going on in Syria, and that was immediately being shared by 700,000 people. So there is hope, I would say. And I think that there are some, at least still, traditional media that are trying to provide a broader aspect of the stories.
Can I just add, I think just very quick.
Inga first and then Peter.
What I just think that, yes, this is the way how people consume news nowadays, like information, and we cannot expect as journalists that they will change their habit. We should change the way how we deliver content. And this is what we, as journalists, like I see my friends who are 20-year-old, like with good education, they, for example, read such called website Vox.com, which was something new for me, and it actually writes like in a style like 7 reasons why Hillary Clinton is better than Donald Trump, or like an opposite. And this is the way how they consume information. We have to follow this. We cannot just sit down and say, oh, in old times it was better. We have to go like this. And we have to figure out how we can, if we are doing long, in-depth investigations with like 5 pages, I'm sorry, but very few or very little people read this. So we have to think how we will provide this information in different ways and use this feedback which comes back.
But now I'm disagreeing with you. Because you have to do both. I mean,
no, sure. But
because
even to write this, like why 7 reasons why Hillary Clinton is better, you have to do really in-depth investigation. Why is this? For example, there is a big telecom company in Latvia, halfly owned by Sweden, and they just during crisis, the head of this company laid off thousands of people or forced them to go on a different job employers can't have it would be agreement and different, so they could save on taxes. And I realized that I don't have enough time to do like in-depth story for this, and also a reason why. So what I did, I wrote a poem and I participated in a poetry slam, and then we posted it on YouTube and like got 20,000 views in one day. And I really believe that my poem was viewed with real facts. I really described how this guy drives BMW paid by the job, how he plays tennis during the work time, how he eats in very rich restaurants where he can let off 1,000 people without any feeling guilt about this. So this is what I think, yes, I did investigation about this guy, and then I just reported it in a poetry way, and I reach audience. So,
Peter.
So I think, as in politics, it's very much about individuals and about choices that different media organizations make. So I've been following this professionally for 15 years, and the first web journalism phase was definitely about clicks, because that was the only metric that we had. We could only measure the success of a story through the numbers of clicks that we could see. But over the last years, we've really seen a change in this. I can only speak for the media organization that I'm part of, Dagens Nyheter, but I know how it works in several different other newsrooms. And one very important metric now is what we call time spent, the actual number of seconds or minutes that the audience is spending on a particular story. So we're not only measuring success in terms of the number of clicks, because that can actually be manipulated through the headline, but how long the audience actually stay and how they engage with the story, when they share it, when they comment on it, when they turn into a subscriber. Because I think, at least for a quality newspaper as Dagens Nyheter, I mean, the only future for us is to have the paid relationship with our audience. So we need subscribers, and we need digital subscribers, and we will not be able to convince them to stay on board if we're only serving them with clickbaits. So I think actually the market is now turning into a better direction than the situation in, like, say, 2010. It's better now. And if you compare how the tabloids in Sweden looked in the 1970s to how they look now online, I would not say that the situation has changed that much. You will still see the same kind of sometimes sensationalism, but combined with serious journalism.
Quick comment, Silla, and then we need to
I think
wrap
we
things
also
up.
make great mistakes as media providers if we think that everything that the young audience do is being online and that they don't want any content, because that's not true. I mean, the most downloaded podcast in Sweden is P3 Documentary. It's hardcore documentary, 2 hours long, and it's being downloaded by 2 million people a week. And these are young people on iTunes between 18 and 34. And then they also want short news, and they also want their Instagram flow, and they want their friends on Snapchat, but they are not only interested in the online world. And we see, for instance, in Sweden, that traditional radio listening is going up. broadcasted radio is going up between 2014 and 2015, even though 90% of the young population in Sweden have their own smartphone and they spend most of the day on Facebook. So you can reach them in very many different ways, and we say that you really have to develop your content, because don't forget the content. I mean, internet is just a platform. You still have to provide something on it. And we say that we really have to develop our content on all three pillars at the same time. And that is analog radio, that's online, and that is together, and the key is together with the audience on social media.
Good quality content. I think that's a good way to end this debate. I'm sorry, guys. I know you have lots of things to
Facebook, Apple, and Google, and use the resources for quality journalism.
Okay, we'll wrap things up there. Thank you so much. The debate will go on. Thank you. There's time for drinks and mingle downstairs, so you can keep talking about these issues. Thank you, Darja Saar, Inga Springe, Monica Garbačiauskaitė, Peter Wolodarski, Silla Benke.
I'm spent, yeah.
Absolutely agree, because